Hi guys, my name is Will Brickner, and today I'm going to be showing you how to build a very basic Node.js API that you can query it with JSON requests, and then it'll send JSON responses. Yeah, let's get into it. I'm going to make a new simple API folder, make a new file, index.js, which is where our app's basically going to run. Don't want to save that. Make a new terminal window. Change directory into my simple API directory. Window. So yeah, I'm going to use npm init. Basically set up the project in the way. Simple API, that's fine. All these are fine. Clear it again. Now I have a package.json, which, if you don't know, kind of describes the application in some way. Describes the dependencies it has, describes what it's called, things like that. So we're going to use express today, so I'm going to say npm install save, which means it's going to save that information to the package.json. Save express, and then I'm also going to use a package called body parser, which allows us to parse the JSON because it's going to come in as text, and then we want to convert it to an object so that we can actually read off information from it. So I'm going to do both those things. This will take a moment. And this is not interesting, so I'm going to go over here while that's running. So I'm going to say variable express is equal to require. I'm going to make this text way bigger. There we go. I'm going to require the module express. Then I'm going to say the app is express as a function, because this I'm sure that express actually exports from its module a function that when you call it, it creates the app object. But it doesn't really matter for what we're doing. So then I also want to import body parser. Now I'm going to use app.use body parser.json, and I'm going to set a size limit of maybe, it doesn't really matter because we're not going to post anything large, but in a real application, a real production application, you would not want to allow JSON over a certain size to, because then your server will be hung up parsing that JSON forever. Someone can post 10 megabytes of JSON, and then you're going to be stuck for half a second or a second or two, however long it takes depending on the specs of your server, which is really bad. So you want to be able to limit, at least in this very simple way, the size of the messages that come to your server. And really, depending on what you're doing, in this case they'll be less than a kilobyte back and forth per message, so it's not a big deal. But in a production application, you'd want to use something like this or something maybe more sophisticated to prevent dangerously large messages from actually making it to your logic server. So anyway, I'm going to use app.post, which basically is going to tell Express I want to listen for a post to slash, basically. And then whenever I get a post to slash, I'm going to call this function, which is going to be an arrow function. So it's basically the same thing as this, but it's just more sleek, and also it doesn't produce a new this context. So this is actually just going to be the same as if I were to do something with this out here. But yeah, anyway. So now I have request, and because I'm using body parser.json, whatever body of JSON text gets posted to slash will now be stored in request.body. So I can say if request.body what do we want to say? Fruit I like is strictly equal to apples. Then I want to have a response.json, which basically means send back some JSON. I'm going to return response.json. I'm going to say fruit you don't like is oranges. And then I can say if request.body fruit I like is equal to oranges, return response.json fruit you don't like apples. And this is just super basic. Keep in mind that you can only call response.json once because just of the way that HTTP requests work. So if I were to take out this return statement and or actually no, this would be fine in this case, but because it wouldn't actually make it inside both these things, but you really can't call that twice, and it'll throw an error, and it'll be nasty and ugly. So anyway, that's basically just all our thing does. If you post what you like, and it tells you what you don't like, assuming that you can only like one of those things. And now I'm just gonna start the server, say app.listen on which word do I want. I'm gonna do something weird like 2323. It doesn't have to, just something that's not in use. Then it calls a callback when it starts listening, and I'm gonna say console.log. Now listening for fruit-related requests on port number 2323. Maybe not number, but port 2323. And that's it, I think. Let's see what happens. Hopefully this will work out. Maybe not doing something. So I'm saying node.index.js, and this will start run our app. Now listening for fruit-related requests on port 2323. I'm going to launch Postman, which is like a tool that lets you easily make run requests to different APIs. And in this case, I've just made this API and I'd like to test it, so I'll use Postman. It allows you to set headers and there's lots of different options. It's very nice. So yeah, it'll take a minute to load, fortunately, but whenever it feels like opening, it'll open. Okay, great. So I'm going to change this to a post. I'm going to say localhost, which just means my computer, 2323, because right here we said 2323. If we had something else, we would use that, of course. It's a post type, headers. This is important. You have to set the content type to application/JSON, or else it will not parse your JSON. It will just request.body will be an empty object, or it won't even be on the request. So that'll be a problem. So fruit I like is something it expects. The body, I just want to enter raw JSON. I don't want to do anything for me, like form data or anything complicated. So I'm just going to say fruit I like, apples. Don't want a new version of Postman. Then I'm going to send this, see if I get a response or not. Fruit I don't like is oranges. And if I were to actually say that fruit I like is oranges, then I would say fruit you don't like is apples. And really, you can do anything that you want here. You can do something more complicated, like let's say I want a random number. Then I can just right away say response.json, or maybe I'll make it better. Random integer is, so how about this actually, make it a little more sophisticated. We'll have a low bound, a high bound, low bound, a high bound. That's it. And then it'll return a random integer. Because we could return a random float like this. Very easy. And then that's just all you have to do. But let's make it a little more interesting. Random integer. Let's say let our random integer is equal to math.random times, say, low bound. Actually, no, we want to pull this from the request. So request.body.lowbound plus math.random, and this will return a value from 0 to 1. I think it's actually 0 is inclusive and 1 is exclusive, so it'll get very, 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 very close to 1, but it will never actually be 1. So yeah, let's say high bound.
Wrong.
Wrong.
That is
It's wrong. And he did the wrong thing. Wrong.
That is.
And because it'll actually get arbitrarily close, so like let's say it'll be 0.999999 times our high bound, which let's say it's 5. That, and then if you floor that, that'll actually give you 4. So what I mean, you know, it's we could just add 1 to this result. I think that will actually give us the proper answer. If that's wrong, that's my fault, but I'm not going to think about it too deeply right now. This is just an example. So yeah, anyway, here's your random integer. But if these low bounds or high bounds are not present, then you're going to get this is going to be not a number, so that is not what you want, and so you want to reject requests, or at least notify the client that's calling this, it's using this API, consuming it, to let them know that their request was invalid. So let's say if it's so yeah, important distinction, the low bound could be 0, and that's perfectly fine, but 0 is falsy in JavaScript, which means that if you say not 0, or like not request body.lowbound, which is the same as not 0, then that'll actually, this'll execute what's ever in here, which is not what I want. So I just want to check that they're both numbers. So I'm going to say if the type of request.body.lowbound is not strictly equal to number, or the type of request.body.highbound is not strictly equal to number, and I want to return response.json error invalid bounds. And so that'll tell you if they're not numbers. So if you don't specify a low or a high bound, this will also throw an error. So maybe what we'd want to do is we'd want to overwrite these and say that request.body.lowbound is equal to request.body.lowbound or 0. So if they don't specify, I'll explain this in a second. Request.body.highbound is equal to request.body.highbound for, let's say, 100 is the default. If you don't specify, it's between 0 and it's an integer between 0 and 100. So really what this is saying that it's either this is equal to this or that. And in JavaScript, when you're like, think about this as an if statement. If you're saying if true or false, then as soon as JavaScript sees that, or whatever engine is running this, in this case it's V8 because we're using Node, but whatever like interpreter or you know, however you're running your script, it says that this is true, and because it's an or, then no matter what this is, this whole expression is going to be true. So I can just ignore this, because what if this takes 5 days to compute or to calculate, but this actually takes, you know, a millisecond, or vice versa. You know, you want to have your least expensive conditions first, especially in a case like this where you can actually lazily evaluate it, I think is what it's called. So they kind of do the same thing for all expressions with these operators, and so you can say that the request.body.lowbound is equal to the request.body.lowbound or 0. And if this is truthy, like if this has a real value, so it's like, let's say that this is 1, or this is like 1, or it could be apple, something invalid, of course. But if it has some truthy value, and you can look up what these values are, or different values which are considered truthy, because some of them are a bit things you would not expect to be truthy. But anyway, request.body.lowbound is either if it's provided, we use that. If it's not provided, we use 0. And the same thing goes for highbound. If it's not provided, we use 100 though. So this will take care of the case in which these are the type of undefined, and then we give you invalid bounds. But maybe you just don't want to specify bounds. Maybe you want to use the defaults. So anyway, that takes care of all that, I believe. So then I just return the random integer. And by the way, I'm using return here so that if this happens, then it returns out of the function and none of this code gets called. You won't call response.json twice, which could be a problem. So yeah, I'll just Control-C to quit my app, and then I'll do node index.js to run it again. Hopefully nothing happens. Okay. Now, fruit I like, that's no longer part of the API. So I'll just send it. I'll get a random integer, I hope. Yeah, great. So random integer is 41, 37, 43, because it's using those default bounds. But now if I said, also the cool thing is you don't have to specify a lower bound and an upper bound. You can just specify a lower bound because the higher bound is either itself or it's 100. So I say lower bound, and then I could say 99. Maybe this will give me trouble actually. So let's see. 77. What the hell? Oh, lower bound. Low bound. Let's put something more reasonable, like 50. So yeah, as you can see, it's generating these random integers in the way that we've described here. You can also do things like app.get. If there's like static content that you want to serve, like static, then you have request response, or maybe I'll say static what is pi, because pi will never change, at least to some precision. It's a constant by definition, so you just send response.json. What do I think pi is? I think the value of pi is math.pi. And now if I open a new thing, new tab here, I get localhost 2323 slash what is pi. Just send it. Oh, because I did not restart the server. There we go. Always gonna make a little mistake. Here we go. Yeah, pi. There we go. Now we get it to the however many decimals of precision it's stored internally here. So that works perfectly. So yeah, that was it. We built a little server that accepts JSON requests and then responds based on what those requests contain, what they ask for. Did some very simple things, but you can build things of arbitrary complexity. It's very, very easy and fun. I mean, of course, there's tons of stuff that's not very good about this API, but you can take these concepts and run them and build amazing things. Hey, if you liked that video, give it a like. It warms my heart. If you didn't like it, give it a dislike. Subscribe if you want to.